Another busy week in news, but we're excited to be joined by a New Hampshire state rep, Dexter, and talk about a shooting in Nashua, as well as a whole lot of other things happening in the news. This is
The New England Take.
NewEnglandTake.com. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you're checking us out on YouTube and all the other online social media platforms. Big thank you to WKXL for picking up the show Saturdays, 8:30 a.m. and thegranitegrock.com for sharing the show every week on Saturday. So excited today to be joined by New Hampshire State Rep Joe Sweeney. Welcome to the show.
Excited to be on, AJ. Thanks for having me.
And returning is Dexter Tarbox. How's it going?
Hi, AJ. Nice to be with you again.
I had a great time last night hanging out with your mother. I just want to put that into the world. She was a fantastic lady. I had a great time meeting her last night.
She is a fantastic lady, and as I said to you yesterday, I am tremendously proud of her for having the restraint not to share any baby pictures or personal stories.
She did a very good job. We both made fun of you slightly and laughed, and that was all. It was a work event last night. I ran into his mom. I've officially met Dexter's mom in person before I've met him in person.
That's true.
It is. It took me a second. I'm like, oh, wait a second. I've never actually seen Dexter in human form, just through the glass, and that's it.
She's my delegate.
So to start off with here, Representative Sweeney, you actually have a brand new podcast, Live Free and Lead. You got the pilot episode out there. Tell me a bit of what you're planning on doing with that.
Yeah, I think it could be the most successful thing I've ever done, or it could be an abject failure that we'll find out in a few weeks' time. But it's really going to just be, I think there's a lot of focus on podcast world, on the national landscape and the state landscape. I really actually want to dive in and focus more on the local issues in every area that we can get into. And I was kind of thinking the other day, I've been involved in, certainly on the Republican side in politics since I was 16 years old. I'm 31 now, and I sort of have built this Rolodex of people, of good people in every town throughout the state. And they all have really cool stories to share. So some of them will lean more statewide because they're other state reps or state senators, or they're businessmen that have dealings throughout the state. But I really want to tap in and start talking about them with these local stories. And really just, I think there's a growing movement to focus more on positive stuff that people can focus on, while also each episode I'll throw in some leadership stuff that I've learned over the years, or honestly I've made up over the years, that sound good to me, and hopefully others like it as well. So we'll see how it goes. But I got a fairly decent response to the first episode last week. And I'm working on the next episode now, and so we should have that out sometime soon. And then I'll get into a regular cadence of getting out content for it. So thanks for the ability to plug it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I had the Granite Goodness guy, Andy DeMeo, on the show a couple weeks ago, who's a great guy. He's kind of approaching it from the other side of the political aisle. He's apolitical generally when it comes to what he's covering, but it's great to see a lot more people kind of taking this angle on it. Like I'm a big fan of what the guys at a bunch of other outlets are doing when it comes to a lot of stuff, but taking a more productive angle may be a better way of approaching fixing some things.
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot of local stories, and there's even a lot of stories with state reps, right? And I think there's stuff that gets sort of misaligned in media as to why people are doing what they're doing. I'm a big follower of like the old like Simon Sinek, like start with your why, as to like why we're here and what like why we do what we do. And I think just telling those stories and teaching our people to tell their story more is going to be helpful long run. I think. I don't know. I could be wrong, like many things, but we'll let time decide on whether or not I'm right or wrong.
Dexter, is he wrong?
No, I think he's absolutely right. And I know the first episode's come out already, but I'm eager to continue listening. I've followed it already.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, let's get into, unfortunately, the bulk of this episode this week on my show is not going to be terribly positive, unfortunately. Let's just turn it the other direction here. Because the news, unfortunately, in recent weeks has been atrocious, and there's some important things going on that need to be covered. And so let's start off with the things really been catching even national headlines here the last couple days. A man shot and killed someone at a Nashua country club. tragic situation. The guy was protecting his family in the process of it. You guys see the video of the guy that took him down? He was telling the story of what he did.
I did see that.
I didn't realize the interview with the guy who hit him with the chair you're talking about. Right? Yes. I haven't seen him be interviewed yet. I'm eager to do so now, though.
It's pretty classic. The guy literally said, "No, we're done here," and picked up a bar stool and smacked him over the head and put him down. It's very tragic, but it kind of goes to show the New Hampshire attitude where we're not just going to stand by and let things happen in these sort of situations, which is really important. And when this whole situation is tragic, everything around it and everything, but the big thing that really got the headlines for it, we can dive into the problematic nature of the way it was handled, maybe from our state government when it comes to it. But the guy shouting "Free Palestine" in the middle of him doing the attack, which totally was like out of left field and caused so much confusion when it came to it, which I think ultimately was the goal. I mean, what were you thinking, Rep. Sweeney?
Yeah, I think chaos was his goal and his energy, and I think we've learned some other things about, like, you know, he said the Free Palestine. He also said another phrase of F Palestine. So he's just kind of like throwing things out there that I think would incite people to be a little on edge and just, you know, chaotic, which he was also shooting at people. So I think that kind of takes the cake for creating chaos, is the gun in the scenario, and not so much. But I think it was tough for people to parse. And it was kind of yet another example of, you have social media builds the narrative before there can be any real investigation or anything, right? You have one witness say, "Oh, he said Free Palestine," which was corroborated by other witnesses over time. But it was, you know, Saturday night, it was one guy saying he said Free Palestine, and then all the running social media theory before anyone could get in front of a camera to sort of explain what they think happened was, okay, this is a guy with ties to Hamas and Gaza, and it's just you guys both see it online. The theories just start running amok. And, you know, I think we're in a tough environment because for so many years, we have elements where good people online go down rabbit holes and then they turn out to be right at the end of it, right? So we saw it with COVID. We've seen it with some of the other events that have taken place where, you know, the people that they start calling them conspiracy theories, and then the conspiracy starts getting proven time and time again. So it makes it really tough to dissuade people from going down that rabbit hole on any future event or obstacle that might happen. And so it is sort of, you know, I think it's right for, you know, there's different ways to approach it, right? Like, I view this as a legislator differently than someone in the executive branch that has to prosecute the guy is going to view it and is going to talk about it, right? Because my words aren't going to impact what a jury votes on, or how a judge comes down on final sentencing or whatnot, or how the case is handled. So myself, my friends, we can be a little bit more flippant. We can be a little quicker to the punch because we can just get out there and share our opinions on it. We don't have the burden of trying a case and proving it in court and getting a jury of 12 people to agree that this is this is accurate and true, and this guy is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime that he's charged with, which is always a wrinkle to it because it's never as cut and dry as we think. And then I think there's another intersection of, over the years, we've added and we've amended the hate crime statute, both at the state level and federally, where we have section of law that says, like, okay, this is a crime of hate, and that's when it's against a protected class. And it kind of makes that a logical step that there are crimes out there where you can kill somebody else and it not be a defined hate crime, even though there's a lot of hate in somebody's heart in order to pull that trigger and kill somebody else, especially, you know, seemingly randomly, as this, you know, story unfolded to be, you know, this. He used to work there a year prior, and so he had ties to the country club. So you don't know if he went there because he knew the layout and he knew the ability to get around, or if he went there with a vendetta. I'm sure with the grand jury and the indictment, certainly everything's sealed right now, but I do have a feeling that we'll get to the bottom of it eventually, and just we'll see what is released and what is put out there for the public to see when all is said and done in this case.
And before I throw it to you, Dexter, I just want to ask you also, so it really stood out to me that Attorney General Formel actually put into the press release coming from the AG's office the fact he said Free Palestine and nothing else, which kind of led to a lot more conspiracy theories beginning to dive up from it. What's your take on whether that was the right idea or not for him to approach it that way?
I think it was, because I think if you were by 11 p.m. on Saturday night, everything on the internet, and not just in New Hampshire, but across the country, was talking about this Free Palestine mass shooting in New Hampshire. And originally there were 40 people that were shot, and then obviously it got scaled down significantly to 3 people shot, one of them deceased. So I think it was already out there, and I think he was cognizant of the fact that it was out there and it was making the rounds, that this was connected to the Free Palestine movement. And certainly there are elements of Free Palestine and pro-Hamas efforts in New Hampshire that we've seen. Even other state legislators that don't share the same party as me are part of that movement that want to see a Free Palestine and are I would say pro-Hamas. And so I think in that scenario in which you have a situation that is pretty volatile, that could get out of hand pretty quickly, in his role of just trying to get out there that, yep, he did say Free Palestine. However, we don't see this as, a hate crime targeting, Jewish people or targeting any sort of class of people, that was just intended to create chaos. I think he only included that because it was already widespread and out there. If he had been the first person to say it, like if he would be like, oh, by the way, the shooter said Free Palestine, but we don't think anything of it, then I think that would have been like off the walls crazy and insane. But I think because of the amount of attention it was getting, he was sort of put into a box where he not had to address it, but had to give a little bit of explanation without giving too much that it would impact the investigation, where they're still dealing with witnesses, they're still collecting testimony, they're still investigating. So he's trying to walk a thin line as to what he can say and what he shouldn't say, just to keep the integrity of the investigation on lock.
Throw it to you, Dexter. I know you got plenty to say on this.
Well, sure, yeah, and I won't go on at length necessarily about the background issue. I'll say only that the Free Palestine movement, as it exists in the United States, seems to me almost totally divorced from the plight of the Palestinians at this point, especially the very innocent Orthodox Christians who are resident in the Levant. And in fact, it seems almost totally divorced from reality. There's no better example, I think, than the Queers for Palestine movement, who are a group of people who surely, upon arriving there, would be executed summarily. It's ultimately a movement which I do think began with a kernel of legitimate concern for those people, which has been wholly co-opted by the radical left as a social cause. So whether the shooter was actually motivated by a concern for the Palestinian people seems to me almost of no consequence. When committing this act of violence, he resorted to the language of the left. And if we've learned anything in the past few months, it's that language matters. So whether he was crazy or whether he meant it, those words, that headline, which has made national and international news, is going to reverberate. And that, to me, is the dangerous, and I hesitate to say interesting, but interesting for the purpose of this discussion, element of the story. Again, whether he meant it or not, as an actual political motivation for his action, he said it, and that line will make waves.
And that kind of goes down to a lot, like a deeper discussion when it comes to the rhetoric we have in this country right now, especially with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Obviously, it's something I've covered the last 2 weeks on the show, so I don't want to dive too headlong into it on this episode, really. But we have on the right, we keep saying over and over again, we got a mental health issue in this country. We don't have a gun issue in this country, and I feel like it's really rearing its ugly head right now. And no one, because there's no easy solution that can be fixed tomorrow, like in theory, we're going to start putting some heavy restrictions on firearms and things like that, which is honestly, in my opinion, the easy way out. Instead of fixing the actual issue, we're stuck here just going. Yeah, this is bad, and we need to take long-term fix to it, but it's nothing we can do right now. So politically, it makes the Republicans look weak, unfortunately, in my opinion, when in the face of something like this.
But even today, the Atlantic magazine, no friend of the right, has admitted in an editorial that the left-wing violence is now outpacing right. So when we see left-wing rhetoric used, he didn't shout white power. He didn't shout release the Epstein files. He shouted free Palestine. Whether it was meant to cause a distraction or not, this is an incidence of violence that is connected with left-wing speech.
Yeah, definitely. And then today, so we're recording this on Wednesday, September 24th. This will probably be released on Thursday, and then it's airing Saturday. There was an attack on an ICE facility, too, where someone literally wrote on a bunch of anti-ICE comments on the bullets. And this, I want to say moron because it's like the guy didn't even accomplish what he was trying to do. He ended up hurting a bunch of people at the ICE that were in a van instead of any ICE agents. So a bunch of people that weren't even part of the ICE operation but were being scooped up by the ICE operation end up in the crosshairs because of the unhinged nature of a lot of individuals right now. Rep. Sweeney, do you have any comment on what happened at the ICE facility?
Yeah, well, I think it's a trend line, and whether or not the Nashua shooting is included in that trend line of increased political violence between the shooting, the two attempted shootings of President Trump last summer during the campaign, certainly the assassination of Charlie Kirk 2 weeks ago, the attack on ICE facilities today, it's no coincidence that the entities that have been facing increased scrutiny and attacks by Democrat elected officials, people that would love to present themselves as moderate, pragmatic leaders, refer to me and my friends as Nazis and white supremacists on the House floor in New Hampshire. You have governors of states like California and Illinois referring to ICE agents as masked vigilantes running through the streets. Now, it's if you fall in line with the left's thinking, right, and you are a noble soldier of the left's tactics and their political party, whether a Republican that we want to get activated to go out and do things, we'll ask them to go knock on doors and make phone calls. The left is telling every one of their followers that Republicans are threats to democracy. They're going to end the government. Gavin Newsom was on TV today or yesterday saying that he doesn't think there's going to be a 2028 election. Like, that's how unhinged they are. So if you are a regular person, let's say you are a 20 to 30-year-old male and you are a believer in left ideology and you're hearing that all Republicans are Nazis, that Donald Trump is a Nazi, Charlie Kirk is a Nazi, ICE agents are masked SS troopers that are going in and they're going to start, after they deport all the illegals that shouldn't be here, they're going to, the theory is they're going to go in and detain regular law-abiding American citizens that they don't agree with. That's when you start shooting. Because your Democrat elected officials who are telling you, hey, they're probably going to suspend elections and they're going to send in their armed forces into our cities that we're going to resist. The only option you have as a logical person, if you buy into that ideology, is I got to start shooting. I got to start fighting back because these people are going to upend my way of life. And it goes back to the comment that Charlie was so famous for. When the conversations stop, bad things happen. And we're seeing the bad stuff start happening because we have an entire side of the political aisle that has realized that nationally they are shut out from the conversation because of their bad policies have finally caught up to them electorally. Young people are going for Republicans more than ever before. And so there's this desperation on the left to like, wow, they used to have it so good. They want to go back to the times in which they could kind of moonwalk back into office. And they're not there anymore. Maybe one day, it's always cyclical. But right now, if you're a Democrat, it probably doesn't feel great electorally or your prospects in the future because Republicans, not only do Republicans have a government in D.C., they're doing real things with it. They're not doing everything that I would love to see them do on the spending side for sure. That's a whole other episode. But Republicans are doing things and they're implementing their agenda. The Democrats freaked them all out last year about this mythical Project 2025 that's going to upend society. And again, the threats to democracy and like the number of times that you hear even Democrat state reps and activists in New Hampshire. There's a video that Carroll County Republicans posted the other day showing protesters from the left calling them Nazis and fascists. And they even call themselves anti-fascist, as if that's going to be some gotcha. Like, oh, we're the anti-fascists, so anybody we oppose is fascist. And it's so deranged. It's so, as Dexter said, it's just removed from reality. But that's where they're living in, and they live in these bubbles. Social media has not helped because we're all in our own respective areas, right? Like we probably see each other's content pretty regularly throughout the day whenever we log on to X. And I'm sure the Democrats that are just like us on the other side, they probably just see the Democrat content. So we're not even talking to each other. We're just talking among ourselves, and we're forming our opinions. And then we kind of get shocked when it's like, wow, they have. It's odd because I think there is on the Republican side of things, we don't hate Democrats. Like we disagree with them. We don't think their approaches are based in logic and sound, and we think every historical example of implementing the agendas that they try to implement has ended up in abject failure. But there's no hate there. I think from my point of view, it's like, wow, I wish I could view the world with the sort of the sweetness and the naivete that my Democrat colleagues view it, because it would be great if everybody could get along all the time and we could just have peace and we wouldn't need laws. And it's like they're living out the world of John Lennon's Imagine as if it was real. And Republicans and the right and libertarians, small L and big L libertarians live more in the reality of like, okay, it is, if man were perfect, if men were angels, we would need no government, but we need to have some structures in place to make sure everybody is safe and that our rights are protected. Yeah.
I think that might almost even dovetail rather into our next topic of conversation. In that, in California as well, just the other day, following the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, an ABC affiliate was shot up, and before the window was repaired, the California, I believe, courts had released the guy on bail.
Yeah, and that's the last thing. Last few minutes we got here on the show. We got 8 minutes left. So I want to spend a couple minutes to dive into. I definitely want your take on it, Representative Sweeney, because Governor Ayotte finally signed New Hampshire House Bill 592/2025, which goes to really make some changes to the previous bail reform law. Full disclosure, I'm in support of removal of cash bail. That's my libertarian heart bleeding all over the place, because if you're a danger, you should be locked up, and I don't give a crap how much money you got in your bank account. You should be in prison or jail until you have your court date and have everything like that. You stay there. That's where you belong. But we've had obvious issues with that, and I'm curious from the Republican House side, what's your take on this bill, and do you think what sort of steps is it gonna take to fix what's going on?
I think it was a great bill that we were able to finally get through. I want to give Representative Ross Berry a shout out because he worked on this bill for years, along with Representative Terry Roy, who is the chair of Criminal Justice and Public Safety, along with all the Republican members of his committee. Obviously, you can write every good law as possible. When it comes to actually making an impact, it comes to the enforcement. I think our law enforcement has been eager to make sure that this law is enforced. I know the courts have been educated on the changes to the law in order to navigate it so that we see less scenarios. We've basically and practically already dealt with the issue of the magistrates, where we had magistrates just letting out terrible repeat offenders.
I think that's the interesting question, because just the other day on WMUR, Governor Ayotte was asked about this issue of activist judges who might continue the kind of catch and release policies that their liberal ideology, sort of demands of them. And she discussed the changes in the standard for holding criminals. They'll revert back to the pre-2018 standard of probable cause rather than dangerousness, which is what the so-called reform implemented. But when she was pressed further about how judges can be compelled to apply the new standard correctly, the words she said were, "We'll have to have an open dialogue." So, Representative, do you understand what she means by that, open dialogue? And is there more we can do to keep the judiciary in check?
Yeah, I would never speak for the governor. I'm a
Of
big
course,
fan of hers, and I appreciate working with her and her office. So if they were
certainly.
listening to this, I don't want them to think that here's
No,
Joe
no,
Sweeney
I just
speaking
wonder
for
if you
her.
understand what she means by
I
open dialogue.
I think I understand what she means for open dialogue because I think the executive branch and the judicial branch want to be able to kind of work together to make sure the enforcement mechanism and the interpretation of the mechanisms are followed appropriately. In the legislature, speaking for the legislative branch, we know the intent of the law that we recently passed and that the governor signed. And if judges start blatantly ignoring the intent and they continue releasing violent criminals back onto the streets with no reason, with no justification for their release. The New Hampshire House has options to deal with said judges, and I
Will you
don't think
impeach
that
them?
I would absolutely impeach a corrupt judge or a judge that is weak on crime. And I think voters have sent us to Concord in order to make sure that we are a safe state, that we are making sure that we're securing our streets and we're making sure that people who don't break the law have the rights to enjoy their cities and their towns and their communities. We've gotten away from that, and I think if judges want to continue making statements, they are free to do so on their own time. But they're not going to be able to do it from the bench, and so we hope it doesn't come to that. We hope that we can kumbaya, and the new law that goes into effect can be interpreted correctly in the courts and enacted correctly, and that the courts sort of live up to the legislative intent. But if there's a disagreement there, we do have options at our disposal.
For anyone that hasn't obviously read the bill is quite extensive. I'm not going to pretend to say that everyone go read the bill. It's going to answer all your questions right away without a JD. Where are we going to be now when it comes to after someone's arrested? When it comes to this law that's been signed?
Yep. So, like you said, we're going back to pre 2018. So, if they get arrested, they'll get in front of a bail commissioner who will talk to them about obviously the charges. And then we have the list of, I think it's about 17 or 18 charges where those are the crimes that they're committed. There's no chance for them to be released before seeing a judge, which that's obviously the big piece of it, right? Like we're making sure that they get in front of a judge as quickly as possible, which in the past, the difficulty with the judiciary is not having judges on the weekends, which is why when we had the sort of split legislature 2 years ago, we introduced the magistrates as sort of a stopgap. So we'd have judges on the weekends. Obviously, that did not go well for us. I wasn't in favor of the magistrates 2 years ago, but it was sort of part of the overall package. We were told it was the only way it was going to get through. So now judges are going to have to be the ones that actually hear these cases and determine these who gets to be released on bond for bail and who is staying. The Democrats' big argument against it, and the public reason that they would claim that they were opposed to the changes we were making, was because if you have a Friday and a Monday are both holidays or days off in the court system, somebody arrested on a Thursday evening wouldn't be seen by a judge until Tuesday morning in those rare cases. Obviously, I think that's a little overblown. I think that's overhyped. I can't think of the scenario in which there's both a Friday and a Monday off from something. So I think the more likely scenario will be, if somebody's in Manchester and it's 11 o'clock at night on Friday and they get picked up, and maybe Monday morning at 7 a.m. is the next time that a judge can see them. They have a lot of time to think about how they got in the situation that they're in Manchester or wherever they're being held before they get to see a judge. And I don't think that is an uneventful or a significant impact on somebody's liberty if they're committing a crime and being held.
And I know the ACLU has some demented objections to this new law as well. I think there are some other interesting questions, at least related to nonviolent offenses and institutionalization, which we should talk about. Maybe we could continue it on your new show, Live Free and Lead.
Yeah, I would love to. I actually, I think I'm the first. I'm telling you guys this for the first because I filed it just on Friday. I filed a study committee as a House bill to form a study committee to examine whether or not we need to bring back a secure state psychiatric hospital for the mentally ill. It's a conversation I feel like we've been having in our own circles for the last few years. And I think it's actually time to get, legislators, lawmakers, enforcement officials, and, doctors and other people that like to be experts on it into a room. And so we can actually scope out the logistics of what that would look like and how we can make our mental health system better in the state. So,
yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, we're out of time, unfortunately. I'm really excited to hear about that. I want to have you back on to talk about that in the future, because that's something I've been talking about on the show, and I've had already, especially with everything post-Charlie Kirk, everything's been going on, something we should definitely have discussions about. But New Hampshire State Representative Joseph Sweeney, thanks so much for joining me today, as well as contributor Dexter Tarbox. This has been the New England Take. Thank you to WKXL, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and 101.9 FM for picking up the show. Next up over there is Facing the Future by the Conquer Coalition. Thanks for thegrindrock.com for sharing the show, and we'll talk to you soon.